Okay, guys, this is one of those serious conversations. I know, there's like some kind of a weird painting of a lobster on the screen, but this is one of those serious conversations, despite the weird lobster. We're going to talk about something. We're gonna think a little bit outside the box, and we're gonna hope to get a few steps ahead of everybody else by thinking about these topics before everybody encounters them, right? So it's become obvious that agentic AI agents are available to everyone, right? OpenClaw, originally called ClaudeBot, then called Moltbot, but now called OpenClaw. OpenClaw is open source and available to everyone. Anyone can download OpenClaw, throw it on some hardware, and use it. There will be many other AI agents that are widely distributed, just like OpenClaw. Pretty much everyone will have AI agents available to them to be at their beck and call. So what we know, if that all comes true, and seems like it's already come true, all of our economies will become saturated with AI agents. So AI agents will be in the economy doing things, doing commerce, doing various things that involve money. That's already happening. That's happening right now. There are people using OpenClaw as their secretary to do commerce right now as you're listening to my voice. So we know that part's going to happen. Everybody's already accepted that we're going to have these AI agents in the economy doing things. They're going to be doing the same kinds of things that people do. I think everybody already accepts that. Everybody paying attention to this topic already accepts that part. The part we've got to think about is the additional roles that some of these AI agents are going to take. I believe not only are they going to fill the role of individual parties, individual people acting in the economy, but they're also going to take up some portion from 0 to 100% of the role of corporations in the economy. If you just wish that someone would take up the role of making your bags expand, especially if the price of ADA goes somewhere north of 30 cents, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. So we've got some serious stuff to talk about today. I think it's an important discussion to sort of have in our brains before this AI agent thing gets too far down the tracks, because I think this is something we're all going to run into. But let's see who's here first. Fly Over Me is here. Let's go. Omar Wright is here. Let's go. Hilldog is here. Let's fucking go. Hilldog says those ghost claws look tasty. That was also what I was thinking. That lobster looks radioactive. Let's ghost. It says Tony Gam. Puckyhawk says the Nebu Claw. Very cool. Thank you. Streetwise says Puckyhawk. I checked out UAP GERB. Pretty awesome, but holy acronyms. That's a good summary of that channel. Very good channel, but very dense discussion. By dense, I don't mean stupid. I mean densely packed with more details than you could ever consume. Streetwise, UAP vid when? Ooh, we'll see. Otis Freechov. So I'm hoping that sometime this year we get to do the mega UAP video, the real one, the big disclosure one. I'm hoping, I won't even say this year. I'm hoping at some point in the future we get to do the real one where we talk about real disclosure. I hope that happens. We'll see. Otis Freechov. Now this is an awesome looking visual. I just hope it means we are about to kick ass in crypto. AOS fam, let's go. I also hope that happens. Mission Zambia says, good morning, AOS. Missed a few days, but I'm back. Let's go. Thank you for joining Mission Zambia. Streetwise says, when? Woo. Thought maybe Skynet was down again. Nope. Skynet is up. The Terminators are out killing all the John Connors like normal. What's the word to Coinbase? Letting you loan out your ADA for USDC. James Syracuse. That is a good question. Letting you loan out your ADA for USDC. I mean, basically, Coinbase doesn't need to let us do that, right? Because we've got DeFi platforms that do loans on Cardano. And USDCX is coming to Cardano at midnight. So I guess it's permissionless. We don't really need their permission. I guess we can just do it. I think we can just do it. I think it's done. So Brown Beardo says ephemeral lobster dust. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. 2110 IFY says hi. Hi. Thanks for joining. Okay. Bakaj Zaravla says, I was wondering if there was a chance you could upload these to Spotify. Not a chance. Not a chance. Troll Toll says hello. So people have asked over the years about Spotify. So because the main problem is time. Like I would love to be on every single platform, but it adds a little bit of an administrative burden, and there's got to be some kind of it's got to be a balance, right? There's got to be the benefits have to justify the burden of doing it. And I haven't quite convinced myself that the benefits of being on Spotify justify the burden, just because, I mean, about once a year, I check, I check sort of the numbers of users on all the different platforms. That plays a role in it. The fact that we do have visuals, I know a lot of this is audio. A lot of this is just verbal, and you could easily just listen to this, and probably a lot of people do. I personally watch, I'm using air quotes with my fingers right now. I watch a lot of videos, like especially late at night, where I'm really just listening to it, like maybe falling asleep or something like that. And I'm really not watching it. I'm sure a lot of people do that with this channel, but there are some things where you'd really miss out if you couldn't see what I'm showing you. So Spotify, there are trade-offs there, and who knows, maybe at some point I'll decide it's worth it, but I haven't yet convinced myself of that. Troll Tolls here. Okay, everybody, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. So what we're talking about here is this. Everybody is throwing OpenClaw on Mac minis, right? People are doing all the crazy stuff. It's like this big innovation. Everybody's like, oh my God, we all wanted ChatGPT like, years ago. Years ago, we already wanted ChatGPT to be this. And some of the trade-offs with, ChatGPT and Grok and the Anthropic products, Gemini, all these big tech sort of LLMs, one of the big trade-offs is you're giving the big tech company a lot of data. You're giving them the whole conversation. Nobody loves that, especially now that privacy is coming to the fore. Nobody loves giving them all your data. So OpenClaw comes along and people are like, whoa, this is open source. I can just throw this on a Mac Mini or whatever hardware I have laying around. People are talking a lot about Mac Minis, but it could be any hardware. Throw it on my hardware, and I've got my own local AI that is agentic. It's an agent for me. I can send it out, and people are already sending their little OpenClaws out to do things like gig work on Upwork, and I'm sure a billion other platforms. People are already sending their little OpenClaws out to do work and making real money with it. So we expect this. We know this is happening. People have been using various types of AI products for a long time to do this, right? It's just happening at a different scale and in a different way with OpenClaw, and people are a lot more comfortable with it. It's kind of bizarre because people are throwing it on a laptop and giving it root access to their whole machine. So they're exposing themselves in other ways, but they're a lot more comfortable that there's not some gigantic cloud platform that's hoovering up all their data, like vacuuming up all of their data and using it for God knows what, that they would prefer that giant tech company not use their data for, right? So that whole revolution is happening right now, and people are getting really excited about it. And it's obvious. There are going to be a lot of OpenClaw bots out in the economy doing all kinds of stuff, doing all the same things that humans do. Like it's been very obvious for a long time that all of the cognitive labor can or will be done by AI, right? I think we've all accepted that at this point. I know there's people in various professions who are always like, not what I do. It can't code what I code. It can't do the thing that I do. There's always going to be those like recalcitrant individuals who refuse to accept that AI is going to be able to do all cognitive labor. I'm very much in the camp. I'm sure you all already realize I'm very much in the camp that AI is going to be able to do all of the cognitive labor. Not that it will do all of the cognitive labor, but that it could, right? There are various idiosyncratic and other reasons why humans might prefer to still do cognitive labor or have it done by humans. There's all kinds of edge cases like that we can get into. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about all the OpenClaw bots taking over our jobs, right? We've done plenty of videos on this channel talking about exactly that. What we're talking about is something else. When I say GhostClaws, I'm referring to a very specific future phenomenon, and we're going to talk about what that is in just 1 second. Chad says tonight I'll be dreaming about lobsters, like delicious lobsters, because this is probably going to make me dream about this guy turning red because I threw him in a pot. We truly need privacy overall, because how is it that a company like, for example, Chipotle can find out that 60% of its customers make over 100 grand? Like, who the hell are you to know this info? I agree 100%, family G7. Very strongly agree with this. Like, fuck Chipotle. They do not need to know how much I make. Fuck them. I don't go in there anyways, but still fuck them. As of February 2026, Coinbase allows its customers, excluding New York, to borrow up to 100K by using their Cardano as collateral. Damn, man, I got to get out of New York. I'll pay 6% to borrow against my ADA without selling. Damn, okay, good. You already found the info. Okay, so let's talk about what I mean when I say GhostClaw, right? What I'm talking about is the fact that as people get better and better at sending their OpenClaw bots out into the economy, right? And I mean, like they might tell their OpenClaw bot. You'll find plenty of videos right now on YouTube of people explaining exactly how to do this. They might send their OpenClaw bot out to do something, right? And they're like, "Hey, OpenClaw, spin up, 7 sub agents, 5 sub agents, whatever. Spin up a bunch of sub agents, and I want you guys to go attack these, like 7 tasks on Upwork or whatever platform, right? Let's go get those ducats. Give me them chips. Those ducats are mine, right? GTA San Andreas. People want the ducats. So they're going to send their little open claws out to do this kind of stuff. But what's going to happen as this gets more and more sophisticated? An open claw bot spinning up sub agents under it to do work every single day is going to start looking more and more like a corporate entity, like an LLC or a partnership or a corporation. And they're going to be out there in the economy doing things, right? And what they're doing as things get more and more sophisticated and nuanced, it's going to start looking more and more like this OpenClaw bot. And of course, there are going to be other versions and types and brands and variations of this, but these AI agents out in the economy spinning up sub agents underneath themselves are going to start looking more like corporate entities. Here's why I'm calling these ghost claws. I'm not calling them these corporate entities ghost claws yet. But what's going to happen is they're going to be doing business, right? How are they going to be doing business? The same thing we've said for a long time, way before anybody was talking about ChatGPT on this channel. I and many, many other people in crypto were all saying, hey, when AI takes over, they're not going to want to use TradFi rails. They're going to want to use crypto. That has never seemed more true than it does now, right? It's super easy for your OpenClaw bot to spin up an address for itself, a Cardano wallet. It can easily spin up a Cardano wallet. That's just a matter of a few digital steps, exactly the kind of thing that OpenClaw and AI agents like it excel at. It's really easy. Just go to a website, do the thing, right? Download some software, whatever, download a Chrome extension, and voila, go through the steps. You've got, all of a sudden, you're on the blockchain, able to transact on the blockchain. You don't need to use those TradFi rails, right? Is the same OpenClaw bot going to go to Chase Bank and open up a bank account? Hell no. That requires a lot of things. And while OpenClaw bots are good at a lot of things, they're not good at filling out KYC forms as humans, right? Not yet. I mean, they could do this illegally, but they can't legally do that. An OpenClaw bot can't pretend to be a human and fill out, can't legally pretend to be a human and, violate federal law. but it can open up a crypto account. So we know they're going to use crypto. They're already using crypto. It's already a thing, right? So here's where the problem comes in. Here's when they become ghost claws, because when you're doing business with a company, right? And we've already said that these open claw bots with sub agents underneath them going out every day, doing business, doing commerce, they're going to look like companies. But the problem is when you deal with a company, what you have is a corporate name. It's like, whatever, we're doing business LLC. And you can take that name and find out where it's organized. In this case, it's an LLC, so it's organized, not incorporated in most states. We would use the term organized. So it's organized in some states. You're like, okay, this is organized in Wyoming. Wyoming has a registry of LLCs. I can go and look that up. And there's going to be somebody, barring some weird circumstances, there's going to be somebody who I can serve process on, right? If I get into some kind of dispute with this LLC, I can serve process on their agent for process and sue them, and basically force somebody to show up in court. There's all kinds of exotic ways around that. You could have a Wyoming LLC, and kind of the sole member of the LLC is actually some kind of a Caribbean, some kind of a Cayman entity, and then all of a sudden you can't actually get to a real human. That's possible too. But under most circumstances, we've got a registry and we can find a human at the end of the road. That's not going to be the case with these bots out there. These bots out there are going to be able to do a lot of the same things an LLC could do, or a corporation could do, or an LP, or any other type of corporate entity. They're going to be able to do a lot of the same things. And what you're going to find, there is no registry of AI agents yet. No state has this. States are going to try it. Some states going to try it because they're going to want to tax these guys. So some states going to do it in the future, and it's going to be a big controversial issue. But there are no AI registries in normal states right now. So what you're going to find at the end of the road with these ghost claws is just a Cardano address, an Ethereum address, a Bitcoin address. You're just going to find an address, right? And as we all know, good permissionless blockchains are generally pseudonymous, right? What we have is a public address, and that's pretty much all you find, right? Because we have these hashing algorithms and you can't go backwards from, the public address, the private key, all that kind of stuff. All you get at the end of the road is the public address. So you're going to have these entities, these open claw type AI agents out in the world doing business. And at the end of the road, there is no LLC you can look up in a registry and find a human you can serve process on. You're just going to have a crypto address. That's all you're going to have. That's why I'm calling these ghost claws. These are open claw bots that will legally sort of be ghosts. Sure, eventually you could do a bunch of forensic work and trace IP. And if they didn't use good VPNs and you couldn't, do discovery on the VPN provider, NordVPN or whatever, in a lot of cases, you could figure out who the bot is reporting to, who the AI agent's reporting to. But as we all know, there are also a lot of ways to obscure those things, right? So we're going to have these entities out there with accounts, with real money in them, able to do real things in the economy. But legally, they're going to be ghosts, right? These open claw bots can very easily become ghost claws. They're going to be doing things. They're going to be able to pay for things, be able to make real things happen in the real world. And legally, they're kind of going to be ghosts. They're going to be out there running around doing their thing. And it's not like an LLC. It's not like a corporation. It's not like a human being with a name and a home address and KYC paperwork. It's just, it's just a ghost claw bot out there in the world. So I think this is a phenomenon that's going to happen, and people are going to be really freaked out when it starts happening. Something's going to happen. Something very notable is going to happen. That news item is going to go viral, and people are going to be like, who the hell is this AI agent reporting to? And it's going to be this big mystery. People are going to be like, oh my God, this AI agent. I'm sure the first one that becomes really famous, it'll probably have some name, some nickname. People will be calling it by some name, kind of like we call black hat hacker organizations, like Lazarus in North Korea or whatever. Some AI agent will do something very, very notable, probably more on the infamous side of the spectrum than famous side of the spectrum, because it'll probably be something bad. And all of a sudden, people will realize we have these full-fledged actors in the economy, and there's no way to get to a human in a lot of cases at the end of the road. So that's going to be a really big policy question for a lot of states and the federal government in the U.S. and every other government to deal with. This is going to be kind of a big hole for the legal regimes to fill, right? And like I said, some states are going to try to say like, okay, if your AI agent, has access to over X amount of money, then you have to register with the state, with a name, and it needs to inform people its name so they can, figure out who to sue if it fucks them, like all those things are going to happen. We're going to get into this territory with these AI agents, because right now everybody's out there buying Mac Minis, chaining OpenClaw bots together, spinning up sub agents underneath their OpenClaw agent, having their OpenClaw agent do everything for them, and just sending them a Telegram message every morning reporting in. That's already happening. That's happening all over the place. And it's just going to pick up and pick up and pick up. So I thought it was good to have this discussion, kind of get ahead of it, so that when this happens, nobody who listens to this channel will be surprised. Everybody will be like, I knew this was going to happen. We talked about it clear back in February 2026. So let's see what people have to say. Okay. Sub-Zero says end of March or April is looking good. Looking good for what? Looking good for what? Omar Wright says Louis the Lobster. Yep. Sounds like a friend of Logan, the one that hangs out on Charles's mic stand. Rulo's here. Hola. Matrix called the bad guys agents for a reason. Just saying. Oh, good call. This is a good call, right? They were agents. Who was the main one? Agent Smith? No. Was Smith Neo's like Matrix name? Who was the bad agent? Was it Hugo Weaving? Was that the name of the actor? Was he the head bad agent? What was his surname? Smith. Okay, it was Smith. Yep, Rulo remembers. Yeah, this is going to start happening, and we're going to see a lot of people figure out that all of the sketchy stuff they want to do in the world, it's a lot easier to do it with a GhostClaw, right? People are going to figure out that's the way to do these things, and we're going to have these OpenClaw bots doing a lot of things, and it won't just be OpenClaw bots. Obviously, like the guy behind OpenClaw got picked up by OpenAI already. So obviously OpenAI is going to try to replicate the virality of that with some kind of branded product, I'm sure. So is everybody else. All of a sudden, they're going to be everywhere under other names. But this phenomenon that I'm calling GhostClaws, GhostClaw bots out there, this is going to start happening, and people are going to know what to do about it. Okay. I was referring to Charles. Okay, Charles's lobster. Gotcha. Smith. Okay, let's move on. I really wanted to hit that topic because it occurred to me that this is going to start happening, and it's a really big legal policy hole. It's a little bit of a vacuum. I think I knew that at one point, that Hugo Weaving was also in V for Vendetta. I think I knew that. But this is a really big legal policy vacuum. There's a hole right now, and I don't think anybody knows. Yep, he was also in Lord of the Rings. He was also Elrond in Lord of the Rings, which was kind of weird because all the other actors who played the main elves in Lord of the Rings are like, it seems like the whole point is that they're pretty aesthetically pleasing. And Hugo Weaving is not a dude who I would be like, he's not like the same aesthetically pleasing kind of character, right? A very, very good actor, and I think great for the role. But it was always weird to me because I was like, they're all like very aesthetically pleasing, and then there's Hugo Weaving, right? Which worked very well in the movie. Just seemed odd to me. I would have done the same thing if If I was Peter Jackson, is that the director's name? Peter Jackson. If I was him, I would have also chose Hugo Weaving. I think he did a great job. So I'm not talking shit on Hugo Weaving, just pointing out it was a little bit of an aberration, just a little bit of an aberration. Okay, let's move on now that we've covered this GhostClaw topic. And tomorrow is going to be episode number 800. And I'm thinking about showing you something I've been working on for a long, long time that has something to do with all of this, tangentially related to all this. I can't quite tell if it's going to be ready or not, but maybe tomorrow we'll talk about that. Maybe we will. There's a few issues that I have to sort out first. So we may or may not talk about that tomorrow, but we'll see. But let's jump into some news. So speaking of AI, I thought this was important. Here's something at the junction. We've already said crypto is going to be the crypto GitHub with many B's. Okay. We've already said that there's going to be this very strong junction between crypto and AI. And already, things are kind of going, certain bad events are happening sort of as expected. So this says, Claude Opus 4.6 wrote vulnerable code leading to a smart contract exploit with 1.78 million in loss. CBE's asset price was set to 112 instead of 2,200. So, no surprise there. No surprise that we've got all kinds of weird, all kinds of weirder. Here's something even weirder that I thought people would be. Here's something even weirder that I thought people. Some people are already aware of it, obviously, because somebody posted about it. But this surprised me. This was one of the shocking things in Cardano this year. So here's a post. Brittany Kaiser, CEO of Alpha Ton, describes the partnership with Midnight as a privacy layer on Telegram and why this is important. When I saw this, I was like looking at this picture of this person, and I was like, why does she look familiar? Why does this person look so familiar? And then I heard her voice and I was like, I've heard that voice before. Then I saw this post down here from Thomas Kirkpatrick. This is the person that worked for Cambridge Analytica and did all types of illegal, fucked up things, then rolled on everyone while getting shit-faced all day in her Thai villa. And I was like, oh my God, is this the same person? And I'm not representing that as a statement of truth. I'm just saying that was posted by someone. But I was like, oh my God, that's where I remember this person from. This person was in the documentary about Cambridge Analytica. In fact, I think I remember them being like the main person in the documentary. So I Googled Brittany Kaiser, and sure enough, Brittany Nicole Kaiser. Brittany Kaiser is the former business development director for Cambridge Analytica. Do you guys remember this thing, this giant scandal? Kaiser is one of the subjects of the Netflix documentary, The Great Hack. I'm pretty sure that's the documentary I watched. I was like, I can't believe it. This person is suddenly the CEO of Alpha Ton and talking about a partnership with Midnight. It was mind-blowing to realize this is the same person. Omar says, I have to go back and watch it again, but I'm pretty sure Charles named an AI agent Louis the Lobster and mentioned him in his keynote address. Oh, okay. Oh, is that right? Elrond is a half elf. Yeah. Yeah. See, I definitely don't know the details of all this Tolkien stuff. She's got a very man voice. Cambridge Analytica. Nope, I got nothing. Should I find it? Oh my God. If people have never seen this documentary, Cambridge Analytica was a gigantic scandal. It was a scandal to such an extent that even I believe even Mark Zuckerberg had to go testify in front of Congress over this. So here's the documentary on Netflix. I'm sure it's still on Netflix right now. This is a documentary that premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. And God, let's see. Can we find? So Brittany Kaiser was the main whistleblower, but like her Wikipedia points out, she was very much involved in all these scandalous activities. When I say involved, I mean, you know, uh, reference the documentary. She's in the documentary, talking all about it. So this is not anything conspiracy theory. Like, this is like she was in a documentary all about this thing. And her Wikipedia says she's the former business development director for Cambridge Analytica. This was a huge scandal. This was a gigantic scandal. People who are around will remember this thing. It's wild. It's a pretty huge scandal. I was shocked. When I saw that she was the CEO of anything. I expected things were so crazy. Like in the documentary, I'm gonna recount what I recall from this documentary. So I'm not presenting this as fact. Double check me by watching the documentary. But here's the kind of stuff Cambridge Analytica was up to according to the documentary. So they talk about how Cambridge Analytica was hired by a political campaign in the Caribbean. And the person running for office on this Caribbean island was not of the same ethnic background as many voters on the island. So what Cambridge Analytica, according to this documentary, and I could be messing up the details here, but Cambridge Analytica was part of formulating this whole campaign to tell this gigantic group of voters on the island who are of a different ethnic background than the candidate, that to create this whole campaign that was like, don't vote, fight the power. It was like, don't vote, fight the power, something like that. And they convinced this huge ethnic group to not vote in the elections on this Caribbean island because they knew they would vote against the candidate whose campaign they'd been hired by. So again, I might be messing up the details, but it's something like this. And that candidate actually won the election, right? That's the kind of stuff that Cambridge Analytica was up to, according to this documentary. So like I said, I might be messing up the details. So watch the documentary, but it's wild. This dystopian stuff, this group Cambridge Analytica was up to, it's like infamous. Brittany Kaiser, former director of business development at Cambridge Analytica, revealed that everything published involving Cambridge Analytica in the Brexit campaign and Ted Cruz's campaign was true. The scandal reached a point where even Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook's founder, had to testify officially in front of several committees of the United States Congress. It was a big scandal. And she was right in the middle of it. And now she's talking about a partnership with Cardano, which blows my mind. So anyways, that's a little tidbit for people to look up. But watch that documentary. You'll be shocked at what was going on. Why is she dressed like an Indiana Jones villain? Sounds like one too. Oh, watch the documentary when she's in Thailand after everything blew up. It's wild. We'll have to catch the rest of the stream tomorrow. Fiat Minds. Okay, thank you for joining. What is free Chove? Appreciate it. Fall Out Boy, we didn't start the fire lyrics. Yeah. It's yeah, this is gonna be interesting. I mean, anything related to Telegram is kind of a little bit like, there are people who have some things to say about Telegram. So you'd think that they would choose a non-controversial character to be CEO, and they kind of chose like the most controversial person they could when it comes to data. I mean, obviously that's part of their choice. They're saying like she was in the middle of this whole privacy scandal thing. She was the whistleblower. So maybe she's the perfect person, and they point out in her Wikipedia, in April 2018, Kaiser started a Facebook campaign appealing for transparency called Own Your Data. So, the data privacy thing is something she's been involved with, obviously based on the things she was whistleblowing about with respect to Cambridge Analytica. But yeah, very shocked to see that. Okay. Here is another post from Steak with Pride, who, as I've said in the past, misses nothing. I very much appreciate Steak with Pride's posts. Here's the post. There are 10 Midnight federated mainnet nodes. 4 have been announced so far: Google, AlphaTon, blocked daemon, and shielded 13 nodes on the pre-prod testnet. So you probably know there's a couple testnets for Midnight. The first one that people were using was Preview. Apparently, pre-prod is the go-to now. That's the one that I've kind of been using in my own little activities. But there's 13 nodes apparently on pre-prod right now, and we only know about these 4. So there's still some surprises coming. We don't quite know who these other 13 are going to be, but this is interesting. This is new information for me, at least. Streetwise says, I remember they were using Facebook quizzes and surveys, IQ tests and stuff disguised as fun to scrape user info for these kinds of targeted political ads. Yeah, the Facebook part of it wasn't the Facebook part of it was like I wasn't so much like worried about the data collection part of it. Like the data they were collecting for people, I was kind of like, well, these people are like doing the things. So it's not like they're, these people are like doing a lot of the things. So they're kind of proactively giving up that kind of data. I was more shocked by some of the stuff, like the thing that went on the Caribbean island I was telling you about. I mean, it's like direct manipulation of campaigns. To me, in my opinion, it feels that way to me. Direct manipulation of campaigns. Obviously, from the Wikipedia, I can't remember. It's been so long since I saw the documentary, but they're also talking about Brexit and a bunch of other campaigns. It's like we all know the whole goal of a campaign is to manipulate the result of the election. They're trying to manipulate it in the direction of their candidate, right? And when I say manipulate, I just mean like move the result in the direction of their candidate. They're trying to manipulate, they're trying to finesse that outcome. So of course campaigns are doing this, but some of the stuff like encouraging that group of people on that Caribbean island not to vote in the election, like convincing them it was like a fight the power thing to not vote because they knew if those people voted, they would not vote for their candidate. That's shocking. That stuff's shocking to me. Okay, this came out as well. This was kind of interesting. Not shocking at all, but could be pretty impactful. Polymarket, the Supreme Court projected to strike down Trump's tariffs, declaring them illegal. 74% chance. I haven't checked this market recently, so I don't know what it's looking like. And Polymarket can swing pretty heavily, but these are interesting odds. I mean, that's a pretty impactful event. If the Supreme Court strikes down the tariffs, that's a pretty impactful event to occur for sure. So here's something you've probably seen people talk about on X before. And in my opinion, it's very true. So I didn't know there was a name for this phenomenon, but there's this adage called Bettridge's Law of Headlines. And it's basically, you'll hear people talk about it on X and they'll say like, if the headline to an article has a question mark, the answer to that question is always no. And it's like, there are some corollaries to it too. Like I think they have some conclusion about any headline that has too many exclamation points, but this does seem to be true. Of course, Brian Armstrong is pointing out this here because the headline he wants you to focus on is this one from the ABA Journal, the American Bar Association Journal. Are payment stablecoins too risky to be used for payments? And to anybody in crypto who's used to the risks involved with actual crypto, of course, stablecoins do not seem risky for payments. They seem tailor-made for payments. So he's, kind of right to be pointing out in this case, but it's amazing how consistently Bettridge's Law of Headlines does lead you to the right answer. So speaking of Brian Armstrong, he's doing more work on this Clarity Act thing, and this time it's more like PR work with us, right? So he says, market structure is making great progress, and I believe we're going to reach a win-win-win outcome, a win for the crypto industry, a win for the banks, and most importantly, a win for the American consumer. So what I would say about that is it's only a win if we actually do get the Clarity Act this year. If we don't get it this year and the Senate or the House flip to the party that's less friendly to crypto right now, I would not call that a win, Brian. So you have to deliver the result, right? I know the White House wants the result, and you want something to get passed, but what the White House is willing to accept and what you're willing to accept might be two different things. So I would say it will definitely not be a win-win-win if we don't actually get a Clarity Act passed. So here's another interesting observation. This is something I've thought for a long time. You guys can tell me who you think he's talking about. So this poster says, okay, hot take. If you weren't in charge of Ethereum, you wouldn't need to keep posting, guys, I'm not in charge of Ethereum tweets. I think I think this is very true, right? It's people keep trying to pretend like some of these blockchains are somehow self-governed, but the people who are actually governing the blockchains, it's pretty obvious. You just need to go on CryptoX and you can tell immediately who is running these blockchains. It's pretty obvious. I think this guy is pretty right. Like you wouldn't have to keep posting about how you don't control the chain if it was evident that you actually don't even control the chain. So Brown Beardo says, I don't even read that much news, but I certainly intuit that law to be pretty true. To be true pretty much 100% of the time. Seems like a really common writing trope. Yeah, it's like everything changed when journalism became even trad journalism became clickbait. When it all had to become clickbait, we definitely lost something. We definitely lost something. So moving on to IR, things are heating up on the IR side of the world, guys. So Uh, this post says VP Vance, the Iranians are not willing to recognize some of the red lines the president has set. I just saw this post down here. This is pretty funny. VP Vance has strong sleeper cell vibes, just like Brody from Homeland. Just saying, for anybody who's seen Homeland, you would know exactly what he's saying. I don't believe that is true, but pretty hilarious anyways. So here's JD Vance saying exactly the same thing on Fox News. In some ways, today's nuclear talks with Iran in Geneva went well, but that the Iranians are not yet willing to acknowledge and work through certain red lines set by President Trump, adding that the president would prefer diplomacy, but that other options are on the table for Iran. So you notice like the rhetoric is kind of ramping up. The rhetoric is ramping up along with the actual movement of metal objects toward the Persian Gulf, including the biggest military naval vessel of all time. The USS Gerald R. Ford has set its AIS to let him know we're almost there this morning, according to this post. So you can see a little circle right there. So the AIS is something that these naval vessels can turn off and on. So it pretty much tells the world, hey, we're right here. You know, it's a big part of sort of naval navigation. And, you know, normally commercial vessels, you know, don't have as much reason to turn them off. But military vessels do have reasons to turn off their AIS and also to turn them back on. So this isn't like we're letting out any secret information. This is something everybody in the world can see. You know, it's used to let people know where you are. And that's what we're getting here. The USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group is letting the world know early this morning, it was letting the world know it was about to go through was about to go past Gibraltar and into the Med, right? And where is it headed? So here's the location of that previous map. Here's the location right here. You can see it's going to go through Gibraltar, and then it'll be in the Med. And where we think it's going to go is right about here, first at least, right? It may go here and just hang out here to use its sort of anti-ballistic missile defense systems to protect, you know, probably Israel and other bases in this whole region, whatever it can reach. It could also go down here through the Suez Canal into the Red Sea, right? Where it would be closer to the Houthis, who, you know, during the 12-day war certainly started lobbying various types of attacks at U.S. naval vessels. So that could happen, could stay up here to, you know, sort of like spread its defensive umbrella over certain locations in this area, or it could come down here and be closer to the Houthis. We don't know, but people are making the projection right now that as of this morning, the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group would be in the Eastern Med in that location in something like 4 days. Maybe by Sunday morning, it would be over there, which is a pretty big deal. All along, it's felt like there's no way anything could actually kick off unless the US has at least the same number of carrier strike groups that it had during the 12-day war. It looks like as of Sunday, that'll be the case. And the rhetoric keeps jumping up as well. Okay. Streetwise says, right, just like in investing, the monopolies are all emphasizing that they are not monopolies, and the non-monopolies are trying to convince us that they are, in fact, a monopoly. That is definitely true. The Cardano community is powerful. Also true. I hate when the map graphic they use has the land depicted as darker than water. I agree. See, like, maybe it's generational. I don't know. But when I grew up, this is how maps looked. This middle map looked like this. This thing, right? I know they're doing it to make it easier to discern the colors of the different vessels, so you can tell what's what over here. But like this one doesn't make sense to me, right? No reason that the land should be gray. I mean, does water look more this color, or does Earth look this color? Because Earth doesn't. It can be gray, but often it's not gray, right? Water is a lot closer to gray than land, at least in my neck of the woods, for sure. Okay. Over the past 6 hours, essentially anything that can fly and refuel other aircraft has flown toward the Middle East. So this is another reason why I'm not on any of the sort of audio only platforms. I know they're all branching out into video too, but the ones that are predominantly for audio is because I like visually to give credit to the people who created these posts. Like I want people to understand that this is Oliver Alexander saying this, and I'm not pretending like this is something my own analysis or my own writing. So if this were on Spotify and people were listening only via audio, they might not understand that I'm showing them someone else's post and think that I'm just like stealing something that somebody else wrote. So that's another reason why the audio dominant platforms don't work as well for this, because I like everybody to see, and I like for these kind of analysts to get credit for what they've done. So along the same lines, this post is kind of interesting. Look at this air bridge. And I mean, it'd be hard to call this anything but an air bridge. Definitely you've got a huge amount of metal flying from North America over to Europe and then onto the Middle East. Non-stop tankers on the move. Absolutely nuts. This image over here is crazy. Look at this one, guys. Look at this. This is crazy. So a lot of movement, of assets right now. Breaking from Trump, apparently. Should Iran decide not to make a deal, it may be necessary for the United States to use Diego Garcia. And someone below, definitely the post of the day, says, leave him alone. He didn't do anything. And he has a picture of like the X profile of a guy named Diego Garcia. If you don't know, I did a whole video where I explained the importance of Diego Garcia. Imagine a little speck of land in the perfect location, right? The perfect location. You could land bombers there. They can attack various adversaries for there. It's like having this permanent aircraft carrier you never have to pay for or do anything with. Okay, in some ways, I guess we do pay for Diego Garcia, but you don't have to maintain it like you would an aircraft carrier. It's got this lens of fresh water they can tap into. So you don't even have to bring in fresh water like you might have to with, if you just imagined, sort of a desolate, tiny island in the middle of the ocean, you'd be like, where are we going to get water from? It's even got a lens of fresh water underneath it. So you can just dig wells and get fresh water. It's kind of amazing. It's like an aircraft carrier that never moves and always has fresh water, and you can land bombers there. So Diego Garcia now in play, possibly, according to Trump. No surprise to anybody, because everybody is thinking this same thing. So everybody's thinking of memes like this. Everybody gangsta until the sky starts missing pixels. If you're just listening, this is a picture of Khamenei looking up at a B-2, So a stealth bomber. Senate Republicans said threatening President Trump and the United States is not a wise decision. I was kind of surprised to see them come out like that yesterday. When they say stuff like that, it's, the Senate Republicans X account is not going to say stuff like that if it's going to piss off the administration, right? They're not going to do it too many times anyways. Or I mean, rather, they're not going to do it if it's going to piss off the administration, right? They're only doing that if that's the message that's trying to be spread. So some more news on the Persian Gulf situation. So this post says, breaking, Iran is under attack from within. We assess that phase 1 of the war on Iran has already started. Phase 2 is imminent and will likely consist of a shock and awe campaign using U.S. Air Force assets to strike Iranian air defenses and ballistic missile launch sites. So, of course, what everybody in the West is afraid of is that the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford might suffer, exactly what the picture that Iran has been painting in memes and AI-generated anime. And that's a ballistic missile attack, a hypersonic missile attack that sinks one of these extremely, extremely, extremely expensive aircraft carriers, the biggest military vessels ever made. So it would make sense if we saw just, kind of something very similar to what we saw in the 12-day war. And that's these kind of internal attacks, right? We've talked before on this channel about the beeper attack, the pager attack that took out such a huge number of Hezbollah people, and a similar assassination that went down in Iran at some point prior to the 12-day war. And so people are kind of implying that maybe this kind of stuff we're seeing is, the same kind of indicator that the bigger attacks will come later. And it makes sense because of concern about the aircraft carriers that the U.S. would want to use Air Force assets that have much longer range than any of those fighter jets on the aircraft carriers. They could take off from Diego Garcia and strike the Iranian ballistic missile launch sites to make it a little bit safer for those aircraft carriers before the fighters on those carriers start doing their thing. So, because obviously the fighters on the carriers have a limited range, so the carriers have to be kind of close to their thing. So there is air refueling. People were talking about that today. There is air refueling, so that's the thing too, but you understand what I'm saying. So while all that's going on in the Persian Gulf, we're getting really weird news also out of Russia. Stuff like this. Putin really going for it now, setting the stage for a full shutdown of Russian internet. When I saw that, I was like, man, it's 2026. If you really wanted to cause your citizenry to revolt, just shut down the internet, especially a place like Russia, right? It seems like there's a lot of internet use going down in Russia, and you could have a very unsettled populace on your hands if you shut down the internet. But apparently that's the report. Even crafting the law so that the Duma can't prevent it. The massacre seen recently in Iran will be nothing compared to what we'll see in Russia. It's going to be an interesting summer. So this is kind of interesting. Like I said, if you want to have an unsettled populace shut down the internet, the only reason you do this is if you didn't want the world, you either didn't want your citizens to see what was happening in the rest of the world, or you didn't want the rest of the world to see what was happening in Russia. So here's some of the headlines. Moscow Times. The president will impose restrictions. Internet shutdowns in Russia have been placed under Putin's personal control. The State Duma passed a law cutting off communications for Russian citizens at the request of the FSB and Putin. So this is interesting. This could herald some grim things. We'll see. So we talked a little bit about the UAP topic. Here's a little bit more. Here's something else. So this, people are acting surprised by this. This didn't surprise me at all. Just look at the look on Caroline Levitt's face, and it'll kind of tell you everything you need to know about this video. So she's basically asked, somebody's like, hey, President Obama did the video, the interview the other day, the one that we covered on this channel. And, he said there definitely are aliens. There are aliens, I think were his exact words. And then he said he hasn't seen them. And then he kind of walked that back and kind of, tried to, attribute that to just the statistical likelihood that Earth is not the only planet in the entire cosmos that has seen the advent of intelligent life, that kind of thing. But we all kind of understood what Obama was saying in that interview. So he brings that up. And then he brings up the President Trump's daughter-in-law saying, kind of implying that there might be something to these rumors that Trump could give the "We Are Not Alone" speech. So the reporter kind of lays all this on Caroline Leavitt and asks her, kind of asked her to comment on this. And of course, she says what you'd expect, that President Trump having a speech written about aliens would be news to her. That would be of great interest to me personally. She says, I'm sure all of you in this room, and apparently former President Obama too. And she does seem genuinely interested. Like she's like, oh, I would love to know about that if that's actually true. But at the same time, you have to think to yourself, if you're the White House administration, let's say there is a speech, right? Let's see Obama and the National Security Council, or whoever, not Obama, Trump and the National Security Council, or whoever in the White House have put together such a speech. Are you going to tell the person, Caroline Leavitt, that is constantly going in front of journalists and answering whatever question they ask? No, she's the last person you're going to tell. Why? Because you want her to have plausible deniability, right? You not even plausible deniability, full deniability. If she has no knowledge of this thing, then she can't possibly accidentally leak something to the press. She can be very convincing, as she is here. It's like pretty obvious that she's like amused by this, and she really doesn't seem to know anything, which is exactly what you would plan for. You would want her to be able to look at the press and honestly say, I don't know a damn thing about that. I don't know shit about that. And it would be true because you didn't tell her shit about it. So this is kind of exactly what you'd expect. Either way, if there is nothing there, which is possible, and there is no speech, this is what you'd expect. And if there is a speech, this is also exactly what you'd expect, because she would be like the last one they would tell. They would tell her like the night before, because they don't want her to have to lie. If she lies unconvincingly, it's going to be this huge tip off. So she'd be like the last one they would tell. So the comments below these are always super interesting. You see like all the most crazy conspiracy theory stuff, like these kind of posts that start out with Space Command is Earth's embassy and works in conjunction with the Interdimensional Alliance. Global governments are biding time until Alliance gives the green light for full disclosure 2030. I'm like, how do you know, bro? How do you know? How do we know that you actually know and you're not just making shit up? Most of the time, it's turned out that those kinds of theories, those kinds of conspiracy theories, where they're disinformation or passage material or just untrue. So we'll finish off with something kind of amusing and positive, not really negative in any way. So this is kind of interesting. This is a well-constructed post. I like this. And I'm sure if any of you are like historical linguists, you'll find reasons to quibble with this post. But I found it to be quite amusing. And I'm sure directionally, it's like sort of accurate. Like I said, if you're a historical linguist, if you wrote a PhD on the history of the English language, you might find something wrong with this. But to hell with you. I think it's amusing, and it makes probably directionally the right point. So these paragraphs are all written in the English of a certain era, and you can kind of see, you kind of go backwards in time as you read it. So it starts out with, written English has barely changed in 300 years. If you can read Harry Potter, you can read Robinson Crusoe, which was written in 1719. I read Robinson Crusoe as a kid, and didn't have any trouble with it. I also probably didn't know at the time it was written in 1719, but didn't have any trouble. Then they go back in time a little bit. The spelling of our tongue was in the main settled. So you notice already this sort of like F looking character is a substitute for S, right? Settled ere the 18th century, and the grammar has suffered but little alteration since. Yet before this happy settlement, things were exceeding strange. And then he goes back to, so this was the 18th century, so 1700s, and he goes back to Shakespearean times. In Shakespeare's days, spelling was much more variable, and you shall find notable differences in the grammar. Thou could be intimate or insulting, depending upon whom you said it to choose amiss. To choose amiss had consequences. And then we go back even further to Chaucer's time. When we now 200 year before to Chaucer's time, it seemeth sit as English, but it's nisnat esse to redden withouten greet caninge. So I can't even read that last part of that. And then he goes back even further to Norman times, yet 200 winter ere soon after. And then they start using characters we don't have in modern English. that the Normans come into this land is English on mutual Wandlung. The Tung's work is to broken French words come in and be written is all tot. So I don't even understand some of these words. And then you get this last one, and it starts looking like Icelandic, right? Can't even read. Obviously, some of these words we can read, but can't even read these. I thought that was quite. I thought that was all quite amusing. So I thought we'd end with something charming and amusing. Like I said, it may not be totally historically accurate, but I think it makes the point well. English starts looking like a foreign language if we go back far enough, apparently prior to Norman times there. So I don't think any of my ancestors were speakers of any of these until much more recent times. So none of my ancestors spoke any of these versions of English, according to where they came from. But I think that's the big news items for today. It's kind of middle of the week. Usually by middle of the week, it's sort of like, especially when there's international events going on. We all know those things tend to pop off over the weekend. So they're kind of out of the out of the press cycle. So Omar makes some good points. Spelling in general, probably for all languages, but especially for English, became much more uniform with the advent of the printing press. Definitely true. And the Gutenberg Bible being the first thing sort of hot off the presses. You can imagine why that was the first written work at that time in Europe. But Wednesday is usually kind of a slower time because all of the important news items have sort of been consumed early in the week, and it's not quite time for things to start heating up. I'll be curious. So if the USS Gerald R. Ford, the second strike carrier group, is going to arrive in the Eastern Med on Sunday, that would kind of imply to me like things could happen, once that second strike carrier group gets there. Who knows? Maybe they didn't want the element of surprise. Things could happen before then. Or maybe it gets there and nothing happens for another week or even longer. We don't know. This is the White House of Wild Boys. They could come up with all kinds of things. I mean, we're talking about Pete Hegseth sitting around a table with probably, Trump and a bunch of generals. Maybe Marco Rubio's there, maybe JD Vance is there, who knows? And they're like, when do we attack? We don't really know when that's going to happen. So it could happen, this weekend. It could happen next weekend. Could be sometime after that. Who the hell knows? But it looks like something is definitely going to happen. The clerical regime isn't budging. Super happy to butcher their own citizens. And the current administration in Washington has made some promises about what would happen if these preconditions continue to exist, and they've continued to exist. So we're going to see something. But I think this whole thing with the AI agents is going to become our new reality. It's going to become a much bigger feature of economic activity than I think some people are guessing right now. I think most people who are following this topic closely are already kind of on the train. Like, yeah, this is going to be transformational. I'm obviously sold on that already. I think it is going to be transformational. There's some pretty big legal policy holes that have to be filled with something, right? I hope they're filled with the right policies to deal with it. They might be filled with the wrong policies, but one thing that's for sure is crypto is going to be a big part of this story. Sure, people are going to find ways to give their agents access to TradFi rails. That's certainly already happening. I'm sure people are just giving their OpenClaw bots access to their TradFi accounts already, because people are giving them access to everything. But I think when it comes down to it, crypto is going to be the path of least resistance for all of these AI agents. So I think the stories of AI and crypto, and especially AI agents and crypto, is going to be very intertwined. So this will be fun for all of us in crypto to watch go down. I think we're all going to have to kind of become AI people as well as crypto, because the stories are going to be so intertwined. I mean, really, everybody's going to have to become an AI person. So this is going to be something we're all going to be involved in. And it's going to be kind of entertaining to watch go down. This is one of those really transformational times. I was sort of born in that analog age, right? I'm a Gen Xer, but at the very end of Gen X. So I was alive during that analog time and watched the rise of the internet, the rise of everything digital. So when I was a little kid, nothing was digital. And then by the time I got to college, everything I did was digital, using the internet every single day. This is all just in the span of a couple decades, right? You go to college when you're 18, it's less than 2 decades. So I think we're going to see the same kind of thing with AI. It's like everybody who was born 10 years ago, you know, was pretty much born in a time when AI wasn't a big deal. And 10 years from now, it's going to be a very, very big deal and just a normal part of life for those people. So we'll see what goes down. Frazik says, don't tell that to the Amish. I am utterly convinced the Amish will just keep doing what they're doing and delicious making delicious food of many different types and, you know, not bizarrely also healthier food than this crazy ultra scientific ultra engineered food that somehow turned out to be exponentially worse for us than anything any Amish person ever made. So I think the Amish people will definitely take care of themselves and they'll probably be better off for it. But the rest of us, we're stuck with the ultra processed food until we give that a boot, and also AI. I hope everybody is having a great week. I think this is an exciting time to be alive, whether you're in crypto, in AI, in both, or just a human out there. I think it's a very exciting time to be alive. I think we're going to see some exciting things, not just in our lifetimes, but even over the next couple of years. So I hope everybody's looking forward to a great rest of the week, and I will talk to you soon.